What's up everybody, it's Dakota here with another tutorial for you today. On this little episode of how I do shit in my apartment, we're going to learn how I do bass. And to start off, I'm going to show you, I have this little like BS track here that I kind of threw together and, mixed it real quick just so, it's a little bit more legit. So I'm going to show you the mix, and then I'm going to show you without the bass, and then I'm going to show you the bass soloed. So yeah, this is kind of my approach to a modern bass tone, what I do to get what I consider a modern bass tone at least, which is essentially just copying Nolly of Periphery's bass tone, because when I think of a modern bass tone, I think of that, and I like it, I go with it. And this bass tone is very extensive. There's a lot of shit going on here. And if you're a subscriber to Nail the Mix and you've seen him do the Nail the Mix tutorial where he makes his bass tone, this is like the exact same thing. And I want you to know I have no shame in that, because I like it and I think it sounds good. So this is what we're going to roll with. So before I get started, there's a couple things I want to talk about. Because before you can start recording your bass is going to sound like shit unless you have like a quality instrument. And there's really 4 things to look for to get a good bass recording. Obviously the first one starts with the bass itself, and typically I would look for something that has really good electronics in it, something like EMG pickups, or I'm a fan of active pickups in basses personally. Something where you can have like at least 3 bands of EQs on the bass and like a blend and a volume. That's what mine has personally, and I think that's like the minimum a bass should have, because the bass is a very annoying instrument to get right. The second one would be a good resonance. You want your bass, when you pluck a string, whether you're doing it with your fingers or your pick, you want it to resonate for a very long time. That's one of the main things of a bass. It's not going to have this low punch to it if the string is just dying really quick. Which leads me to my next point. Get some new strings for your bass. They're expensive, and it's really annoying to change the strings on a fucking bass, but do it, because I told you so. And the last one is, when you're recording the bass, you need to pick hard as shit. Like, however hard you pick for guitar, if you're a guitarist like me, pick like twice as hard for bass. When I play bass, I almost have like a swinging motion with my arm to get some momentum into the string. I pick hard as hell when I play bass. And a lot of my favorite bassists, I've noticed they do the same thing. They pick extremely hard. So, to get to this bass tone that we have going on here, which I'll play for you soloed. So where this really starts off is, I have a Dark Glass B7K, and if you don't know what that is, it's a preamp pedal by the company is Dark Glass. It's the Microtubes B7K, and if you don't have one, it's not the end of the world in terms of bass tone, but it does help tremendously, not gonna lie. If you do have one, I'll tell you my settings right now. It's the lows at like 11 o'clock. The low mids and the high mids are both at about 2. The trebles at about 1 o'clock. The blend is at about 3 o'clock. Levels at about 3 o'clock. Drive is at 9 o'clock. And I have the attack on, and I have the, what's it called? I have it on the raw mode for the low end section. And that's pretty much how it stays all the time. I really don't tweak it from there because I tweaked it a lot and those were the settings that I liked, and I haven't really changed it since. So if you have a dark glass, those are the settings I use. If you have something like a Sans amp, that works just as well. Essentially all I'm doing is I am blending in a little bit of drive and I'm boosting the mids and cutting the low end a little, because the bass has a lot of low end naturally and I don't really need anything from the pedal. So that's kind of my mindset there. And then also those are like fixed frequencies, so if you go over to the dark glass page and you look up the frequencies for each of the knobs I just listed, you can kind of boost and cut them yourselves and get like a similar effect with an EQ. So that's where everything starts. And then we get into the mixing part, which we have to tackle this. All this. It's gonna be fun. Good stuff. So I'm going to start by bypassing everything. And I should also note that all of these plugins are doing like just a little bit at a time. It's not like I have like on the virtual mix rack here like 17 things. I think I have 2. And there it is, 2. And to show you what I'm doing here, at 10K, boosting a little bit, and then I'm compressing it a little bit. That's it. And so this is what I should have done first, is this is the raw bass with the B7K. Which for a lot of applications that aren't metal, that would already be a great sounding bass. But this is metal and we do a bunch of unnecessary things, so I'm going to do a bunch of unnecessary things. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm boosting 10K here like 2 decibels or so. And this is what that is doing. So it's just bringing a little bit of extra top end into the sound. And then what the compressor is doing is it's kind of taking that like slappy, I don't know, like I call it like a wet slappy sound, and it's kind of getting rid of it. And you can hear it, especially on the low notes. So it's kind of leveling everything off and getting rid of that wet slap. So the next thing is a really... Okay. So traditionally, a middle bass is recorded where you split the signal half and half. You have a distorted track and you have a clean track. Well, if you have this FabFilter Saturn, then it's awesome for this application. And if you don't have this plugin, get this plugin because it has applications all over the place. You can use it on vocals, guitars. I just happen to use it. I don't say I happen to use it. I got this from Nolly. I got this entire chain from Nolly of Periphery. So I'm not even going to lie to you and say it's mine. None of this is mine. But it's a great chain for a bass tone in my opinion. So I'm sharing it. And yeah. So essentially this low band here, I have this mid cut off at 290 about. And essentially this section here is pretty much clean. This section here is distorted with this heavy saturation preset, or I don't know what it's called. That. It is on that. And I have the drive like turned up a little bit, about 75. And I have it taken down in the mix just a little bit. So this side is clean to keep the low end nice and tight, and this is going to give you that nice distortion sound. And this is what that sounds like. Cool, so now my bass has some distortion. What do we do next? Well, we need a cabinet. I use this Rosen Digital Pulse IR loader, which is free. And I like it a lot because it's got a low CPU and usage, and it's very low latency, which I like as well. And I have this SVT 810 421 cap edge 1-inch. This is from redwires.com. They have this there, and yeah, It's a great sounding bass. It's my favorite bass cab. I just happen to have it, and it sounds great. So this is without that, and then with that. Cool. So now it actually sounds like a bass. What do we do next? Well, naturally in any IR, there's going to be a couple like resonance frequencies. And so this is just to get rid of those. And I'll show you what that's doing. So yeah, it's just helping clean it up a little bit. It's a very dark sounding IR. And yeah, so to help tame that, what we're going to have to do is boost more high end. Because, you know, why not? The bass already sounds like a bass. Let's get some high end in there. So, as you saw, this is some interesting stuff going on here. So I'm going to bypass everything here and just start with the lift. So what I'm doing here is adding a whole bunch of top end and then just bringing back a little bit of the body to even it out. And this is what that is doing. Cool. And then what we're doing here is I'm cutting a little bit of this mud that's in like the like 400, anywhere from like 350 to 450 area. You can cut it pretty not, I don't want to say substantially, but there's going to be some mud in that area that you're going to want to get rid of. And then I'm also high passing it to kind of get it out of the way of the kick a bit. And this is what that's doing. You'll probably notice how much tighter the bass sounds then. And then what we're doing here is boosting some more high end and some... Oh, yeah, that's it. I thought I was doing more there. Yep, just this right here. Boost it. Just some more high end in there. Gets a really nice attack out of it. So next in line is our bass here, which you'll notice with the bass tone we have now, it sounds good. But that low note isn't very defined. And so turning this on, you'll notice the low note will become much more defined. Really helps fill out the low end of the bass. So now we have more EQ. And one of the best tricks that Nolly probably gave in the entire Nail the Mix session that I have found for bass is this 750 boost right here, which is kind of like a it's kind of like a weird region that you'd normally not want in bass, but boosting it just a little bit gives it this nice blend with the guitars. It just helps it mesh really well with the guitars. So if you haven't tried doing this before, especially with this, if you have this plugin pack and this plugin specifically, the FGN, then I highly recommend doing this because it really helps it blend well with the guitars. And then we're boosting just a little bit more top end here and driving the entire thing just a little bit, which sounds really cool because it really helps fatten up the entire bass. And I'll actually bypass this and bring it back in. So it really helps fatten up the bass tone, and it sounds awesome, in my opinion. And then what we're doing here is we're doing some surgical, I don't want to say super surgical, but some surgical cuts just to get rid of some. After all this boosting, we've brought in some high-end hiss, so we're going to tame that a little bit. Cool. Next is some multiband compression, because the bass is an extremely dynamic instrument, And so you really want to get that low end like tamed and pinned, especially in a metal mix. So you'll notice that once I bring this in, it's going to tame the low end, and what is actually done is the high end is then, or the low end, sorry, is then pushed back up to help boost it back in. So it's boosted back up, but it's pinned in place very well. Starting to be a sick bass tone. Alright, next is the FabFilter Pro Q2, and this is just one little dip right here, just to help it blend with the kick. And you're not really going to notice a substantial difference necessarily unless you're listening to high quality monitors. But that's just about the range I have my kick focused on, so that's just to help keep them separated. I also have an EQ on my kick. I'll go ahead and show you. That kind of gets rid of this section here, which is where the bass is going to sit. So they're kind of out of the way of each other. Next is some limiting, just to further pin the bass in place, because at this point, that's our bass tone. That is a solid bass tone. So we're going to do some limiting just to pin it in place. And I accidentally forgot to adjust that before I started recording this video, so you saw me adjust it. And then another super cool thing that Nolly did was bring in a little bit of reverb on the bass, which I'd never seen done before, and I absolutely love this. I do this on both. You'll see it. I also have it on my guitar bus now, where I bring in just a little bit of reverb with a very, very quick decay time, and just very low in the mix. It's very subtle, but it really helps bring out the low end of the bass and just helps fill out the entire mix. So yeah, that is the entire bass tone, and listening to it back in context with the mix. So that is how I get my modern bass tone. I pretty much use this bass tone for everything. I even have a preset of it here, bass. So anytime you see a video of mine, it's more than likely this chain right here. I really like how this bass sounds, and I really like how it sounds with my guitar recordings personally. So that is my bass tone tutorial, my modern bass tone tutorial. Realize that I play bass with a pick because I like how it sounds, and I'm not that great of a player with my fingers. You can try this preset if you're a finger picker, but you might have to tweak some things in there. But if you're one of those pick pickers, then this preset should sound pretty good for you. And like I said, don't forget, before this entire signal chain here is the Microtube's B7K, which you could also try something like a Sans amp. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. If you have any other questions, like I've completely changed how I mix drums. If you have any questions about how I've done any of this stuff here, or how I did any of the guitars, let me know and I'll make a separate video for that, probably with the same mix because it's, you know, really simple. Probably do the guitars different. It's not very often. I used Easy Mix for these guitars here, which I don't do very often. Normally I use my Randall Satan into my Zilla cabinet. But if you guys have any other tutorials you'd like to see, let me know. I'll see what I can do. Thank you guys for watching.